Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hi and welcome back to another module on basics of working drawing. So in today's module we will be continuing with the previous module for the part 2 of the previous module. The previous module was elevations and sections. In this module we will be continuing with the part 2, which is sections. So what exactly is a section? So when we look at a section, similar to the previous module, in the previous module we did discuss that we have elevations, and elevation is an orthographic projection. So similar to that, a section is basically orthographic projection which is actually a cut through the building. So in this case you can see that this is a complete building, but it has been cut through, and this is the visual that you see if you are looking in this direction, right, from the split side of the section. So these are all the things, all the dark lines that you see are all the things that have got cut through the building, right. So this is what you see along with all the ground line. Also the plinth beams are visible, also the ground plinth is visible, the ground level is visible, and all the things that are there in elevation, like the columns which are here, right. So you see the columns here, the columns which are in the middle, that also you see, the beam which is here which has been cut, that you see, the beam which is probably on the other side of the wall, which is the other end of this side, you do see a beam on top, and also probably there is also another window which is there on top, similar to this window on the opposite direction, opposite side of this particular building, where you see this. You see the door, you see the door here. It's also sometimes called as the sectional elevation, right, because you are looking at the whole depth of it, right. So in this particular case you do see this as a section, right. So what is it exactly? It is an orthographic projection of a building as it would appear if cut through by a intersection plane, right, or a intersecting plane. So if this is an intersecting plane cutting through the building, this is how it will be looking like, right. Now why are they important? A building section is basically a premier drawing which basically gives you a complete idea of the relationship between floors, between walls, the roof, the structure of the roof, how the building is, and the complete dimensions and the vertical scale of the elements, right. Often also the horizontal scale of elements. Although in elevations you do see the horizontal scale of element, inside on the interior of the building is what the section more reveals. Okay. So in case of a section, say just to give you a example, here is where we see the elevation of this particular building side, right. So this is where we see the elevation of this particular building. However, when we cut through, this gives us an idea that the complete space of the room is this high. However, the proportion of the window to the wall surface in the interior is of this ratio. However, on the exterior you have other windows on the other side, right. So this is how proportionately it can be looked at, or it can be observed, right. So it is a very important thing, very important drawing to be conveying more information about the building, particularly its interaction with the exteriors and the interiors, right. So how your interior space reacts with the exterior, or how the exterior actually gives or communicates with the interior of the building, is what can be represented through a section, or what can be understood through a section, right. So it talks about that relationship, okay, talks about that relationships between floor, walls, roof structure, and all the other elements of the building, right. Very important drawing. Moving on to next, we have the sectional drawings, right. So in sectional drawings are also used to show the interior details such as furniture. So here in this case you do see that there are two desk kind of things which are visible here. So you have two desks here, right. So similar to that, you can show all different types of cabinets, furniture, if there are certain wall hangings which are there, wall treatments which are there, on the interior if there is some kind of special elevational treatment done on the walls, all of that can be shown. particularly in addition to this, all the fittings, electrical fittings, electrical appliances which are being put in case of say kitchen, that can be represented, okay, that can be shown. So this gives a complete idea of how is the room or how is that particular space scaled in that particular building, right. So moving on further, what is exactly the purpose of this particular drawing? We have talked about plans, we have talked about elevations, we have talked about site plans, we have talked about electrical layouts, we have talked about water supply layouts, we have talked about all 3-4 different types of utility layouts, but still you want more drawings, right? You want sections, because in sections you actually do an interaction of all of these, actually represent the interaction of all of these different drawings which are there, and sections are the place or are the drawings which can help you understand if something does not fit, right. So the primary use is to show the design material, dimension, final appearances of a structure's interior components. So you represent something in the interior, and if it doesn't gel up or it doesn't match with the exterior, then section is the one that will immediately let you know that, immediately communicate to the person drawing that, right. So that's the foremost and the first important thing, which is very, very important, right. Second, you have an interior view of the building with each component relationship with the other component, right. So you get to know that, okay, there is a foundation, there is a floor which is being done, there is a roof which is being done, there is a wall which is being done, there is a roof, there is a ceiling, there is a different type of roof altogether on the top. So how does it all create that complete space that you want to create for your client is what the section does for you, right. It gives you a first hand cut view of exactly how the building will be behaving and how all your materials will be coming together to give that design and look and feel of what you imagined it to be. Next, they show the connections between the vertical and horizontal spaces, right. So in this case, this is the complete vertical space which is being used, right. This is the complete vertical space which is being used, and in this, these 3 horizontal spaces 1, 2, 3 are stacked up on each other, right. These are floors, so they are stacked up on each other, creating that vertical space, right. So this is how you see the connections of how a particular floor plan is interacting with the other floor plan. Say for example, you draw a staircase here, but somehow you are going to reduce the height of the floor on the top or increase the height of the top, then in that case you will require additional steps. So if you change the interaction of different floors, you will have to include more number of steps or more number of elements which a section lets you know about, right. Lastly, they show the structural elements, width and depth and their impact within a space, right. So within a space, so here itself you do see that the interaction of structural elements. So your structural elements are like footing, your floor, your plinth beam, your ceiling beam, your columns which are there, right. So all of these different entities, how are they interacting with each other? That is what you get to see through a section as well. If there are some columns which will be getting exposed on the interior because they are large size columns, or there are some floating columns all of a sudden on top, all of this is visible through the section. Now going further, now in this case, where are sections located? So sections are drawn to help you understand the design better, right. That's what we have established so far, and I have been repeatedly talking about the same thing in previous 2-3 slides, that sections are going to help us understand the design better, right. So that's the whole idea of it, and it is important that the section cuts through a complex detail of the building. So what happens is, if there are some certain junctions, for example the wash closet or the WC area and your room, right, and your rooms, the space around that area, right, usually people or usually designers accommodate a wash basin in there, right. So that particular area becomes a little bit complex because you have a lot of services coming in there, you have a lot of utilities being managed in there. So all of these things need to be taken care of in a very critical manner, right? So you will have a lot of things to manage with the heights. So for example, your height of your basin, your height of your tap, your height of the bulb which will be going on top of the mirror, the height of the mirror with respect to the finished floor level. So all of these are very critical. So once you draw a section, all of these things can be clarified with respect to the other part of the building, right? With respect to, say, the living room or the kitchen or wherever, from whichever room you are going towards the toilet area, the WC area, within that particular context you can resolve. So that is what is a complex area within a building, right? So a section usually cuts through the toilet in most cases, and there are other sections as well, but usually it cuts through the toilet because that's the complex area within a particular building, right? So the number of section depends on the level of complexity of its design. So if the design is too complex, you will require lots of sections, right? So different types of sections with which you can understand the building, right? So it is always recommended that the cutting plane passes through so many things. Like, what are these things? One is it passes through the staircase, right? Particularly to show the landing position, where the mezzanine landing is. So you have steps, and then you have the landing. Then you have more number of steps going on top, right? So you have 2 floors like this, okay? So you need to show the position of landings. So that is what is really important. So that will be clarified here. Along with that, the window position, where the window will be placed. For this particular case, if the wall is here, whether there is a window here, or whether there is a window on top, or whether there is no window at all, or if there is a skylight on top. So all of that will be clarified through a section, right? So these things are difficult to be communicated through a plan and only an elevation. So to pass that or to surpass that particular hurdle, we introduce these details through the section, right? So the window position in the stairwell, the number of steps, as I mentioned here, right? So there will be certain number of steps depending on the floor height, the kind of railing that there will be present, and the clear height. So what is the clear height here? What will be the clear height on the subsequent floor on top, right? Whether the height satisfies here or not. So all of these details are to be taken care of, right? And that's why it is very important or recommended that you always cut the section through the staircase, right? Next is your windows and doors, right? So to show the sill height, right, where your window is, say for example you have your window like this, so this will be your sill height and this will be the lintel, right? So from the ground level you need to show the sill height. So it needs to go through the window as well, right? So that is very, very important, right? So this is supposed to be lintel, right? So the lintel height is also visible of the door and windows, right? So it's very, very important. Next you have the mezzanine floor, right? So if in case you have a mezzanine floor which you have a clear height, and then you have a half floor which is right here, and then you have another floor on top of this, right? So you have a double height structure and your floor is halfway there. So in that case, mezzanine floors are not visible in the elevation, right? They are also drawn on plans, but then the mezzanine floor plan is a separate entity where you show the lower level plan in lighter lines, right? But the height context, the way you get the ceiling height, that is not clarified from the plan, neither from the elevation. So in that case, the section helps a lot, right? So it helps to understand the ceiling height for a double heighted structure, for a double heighted room, as well as the mezzanine floor, right? So it's very critical. So these 3 things are very important through which it should pass ideally, right? Along with that, you may also consider passing it through the toilet or bathroom. However, a detail sheet is also provided for the toilet and bathroom details. So that's another module which we will have later on, right? But in a longitudinal section or a transverse section, either or, you should always ideally do this, include these 3 along with the toilet and bathroom, right? Now, though this is the checklist of all the things that are to be there to call it a complete section. So, any drawing that you are going to create, that should have all of these different details to call it a complete section, right. So, the first one is your exterior and interior wall should be of correct thickness and the correct type of hatch, right. Now, correct thickness is fine. We do know that the exterior walls are thicker than the interior walls, so that can be always worked on to. But what does it mean, correct type of hatch? So, in this case, if the exterior walls are of masonry, stored masonry, then the hatch will be different. If the interior walls are of the partition walls are of wood or glass partition walls, then the hatch will be different. So, all of this is to be taken care of. This helps communicating with the contractor, communicating with the client easily, right. Moving forward, we have the column beams and dimensioning. So, the column beams, dimensioning and positioning of all these structural drawings needs to be really effectively done, right. So, this can be taken from the structural drawings if there is a consultant in a particular project, or if the architect's office is doing it themselves, they will be using the center line plan which was done in the plans, right. So, we had done a center line plan to plot the column center lines, identify where the columns will be located, and then accordingly organize where the beams will be passing through. So, all of these details are to be imported here in this particular section drawing, and then accordingly a section is to be drawn, right. So, all of these details are to be put in place. Next, you have lintel and sill level beams, right. So, these are to be also mentioned and the dimensions are to be put in place, right. So, as we mentioned in the earlier slide that the section needs to pass through the window. So, when it passes through the window, the lintel and the sill will be visible, right. So, in that case your lintel level and the sill level passing through the window section is going to look somewhat like this, right. So, you will have the sill and you will have the lintel. So, these heights are to be mentioned along with the dimension of the complete window, right. So, this is how it is done, right. Next, if there is a filler slab, right. So, if there is a filler slab, the filling material should be mentioned and a note on the filling material is to be added. For example, if there is a filler slab on the ceiling, right. So, say terracotta pots are being used to do the filler, right. So, in that case a note is to be mentioned that yes, these are terracotta pots. So, in that case the slab would look somewhat like this, right, and then there will be concrete here, right, and maybe a lining of terracotta all along this, right. Similarly here as well, right. So, if that is the case, this has to have a note that this filler is terracotta pot, right. So, somewhat like that you need to mention, okay. Moving on to next, doors and windows with basic details and the appropriate annotation or the naming of it is to be mentioned, right. So, the schedule of joineries is also to be mentioned in the drawing sheet with the schedules of doors and window, right. So, the door and window and joineries, both of them will have their own schedules, right. So, these are to be mentioned in the drawing sheet itself. If there is a section being drawn which shows doors and windows which are annotated or which have been given names, they are to be accompanied with the door and window schedule in the drawing itself, right. So, that is very important. And lastly, the vertical dimension of the buildings and vertical levels along with the ground line is a must, right. So, as we were talking about it earlier, that in the elevation as well we do show that this is the ground line, right, or the ground level. So, in that case along with the ground level you should also show all the floor levels, right. So, this is maybe floor level 1, this is floor level 2, so on and so forth, right. So, these are different heights and dimensions which are to be mentioned clearly, okay, very important. Moving on to next. Now, what are the different types of sections that we have, right. So, typically sections are used to show various places in the building that we have established so far, but based on what section depicts, it can be categorized into 3 types, right. First is structural section, right. A typical building section, it is a very typical building section which is used to show the construction and the structural element of interior design of your interior elements of the building, right. So, whatever is the structural design within a particular building, it will show the construction details and the structural details of that particular building, very important. Along with that, you have the sections, right, you have the wall sections. So, to show the elements of the wall, right. So, what kind of elements are there, whether it is in detail, whether if there is a lot of detail, it is to be zoomed in a certain manner. So, you need to show a call out and a bubble, like you need to show a zoomed area, meaning that you will be showing a blown up area. Say for example, you have a very minor detail of say glass tiles on a particular wall. So, in that particular area you have that glass tile pattern. So, you will do a blown up of that area and create a blown up on the side, which will show the complete grid of how the glass pattern is being placed. So, that is what is really required, right. And then you have detailed sections which shows the intricate details of the building. So, similar to the callouts or similar to the zoom manner, there can be independent detail areas. For example, the starting of a particular staircase usually requires a detailed section, because the starting first step of a staircase is always the most detailed one, right. So, that is a very attractive point of the first balustrade. So, that particular area often has a lot of intricate details, right. So, that is to be done with a detailed section, that requires the detailed section to be provided along with it, right. Moving on to next. So, in terms of geometry, there are 2 types of sections. One is the transverse section and another one is the longitudinal sections, right. So, you can split it in 2 parts, right. Now, in this case, this would be the longitudinal section that you are passing through the whole building, right. So, this is your longitudinal section and this is the transverse section. So, when you go all along this building, this is your longitudinal section where you are splitting the building in the longer length, and this is your transverse section, right. So, you are splitting the building in the shorter length. Okay. So, you see the in the transverse section you see the smaller part of the building or the width of the building much more, and you see the length of the building in the longitudinal section, right. Clear? Moving further, right. So, ideally this is how a typical section would look like, with all the hatches, all the checklists which we have talked about prior, right. So, all of these things will be visible. Now, if we start from the bottom and then we go towards the top, or if we iterate on the other side, we start from the top and go to the bottom. If we go to the top, we see the vertical grids are as per the floor plan. So, in the floor plan we often do the center line plan, right, which is a mandatory thing. Even it becomes a reference for the structural engineer, or sometimes it is given by the structural engineer to the architect's office. So, in this case you have the vertical grid as per the floor plan. So, you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 5, 6, right. So, these are different center lines which are there. Then you see notes and annotations. So, in certain places like here you have a roof cover. So, a roof cover detail is mentioned, right. Probably there is another detailed sheet which is available along with this thing. Then you have the staircase. So, in staircase you are going to number all the different steps which are there, right. All the steps starting from 1 here till the topmost step, right, still the last step on top, including the mid landing, and all of this is to be detailed in a very clear, legible manner. Along with that, you also need to mention all the dimensions of all the clear heights which are there next to the staircase. Okay, very important. So, along with that, the next thing is the window section which goes through the wall. So, here is where you see the window section going through the wall, window section going through the wall, right. Another window section going through the wall at the bottom, right. So, very important. So, you see where the windows are actually placed and how the light would enter a certain space and how it will be illuminating that particular area, that gets clarified through here. So, it is a very important thing, right? So it's an important detail. Along with that, you have to show the horizontal levels of the building. So if you go on this side, then you will see that there are various different levels which are being mentioned. So here in this case of the building, or in this case we have a basement level, so basement is marked. There is a road level, so road level is marked. Then the ground level which is created for this particular building is this, so we have it elevated from the road level, so it is coming here. And then you have the first level which is here, then you have the finished floor level which is this level, the first floor level. Then you have the first floor lintel level which is here, then you have the second floor level, so on and so forth, right? So you have all the horizontal levels of the building. Along with that, if you see the complete building, brick walls have brick hatch, right? Ground has the earth hatch. Your concrete has all the concrete hatches at the appropriate places. And probably if you zoom in more, you will see that the fittings here, which are most probably wooden, will have the wooden hatch as well. So all the appropriate hatches to distinguish between the materials are also being provided, which is very important, right? So all of this creates a complete section. Okay, so moving on further, if we go do a detailed section, this is how it would look like, right? So this is a detailed section of a corner of a room which will be having a raised floor, and there is a decking being done, right? So the detail here is what you get to see, right? So you have the wall which has some kind of insulating material in the middle, right? You have the sheathing on the outside, right? You have the sheathing on the outside here. So this is exterior, this will be interior, right? And this is the detail which is being placed. So to raise the sill, you have the sill sealer, you have the tread seal plate, and you have the concrete stem wall, which is nothing but the plinth wall. This is also acting, because it's concrete, it will also act as the plinth beam, on top of which the joist will be raised, right? So here is where you have the rim joist, and here is where you will have the floor joist which are there, right? So you have the subfloor detail, you have the wall structure here, you have another insulating material for the floor, and you have the finished floor level. Most probably a place in very cold climates, so because it's all wood, right, and insulated as well. So this is how a detail is done for a blown up area, right? And then you have the wall sections which are for individual rooms and buildings, right? So in this particular case, what happens is you have the detail of the kitchen area. So you show all the clear heights which are there, which is from one finished floor to the next finished floor, right? One finished floor to the next finished floor. So you get the heights of the complete building which is there, right? If you keep on adding them along with the horizontal levels, you will get to know how high the particular floor is, or how high the particular building is, right? And then there is another section, say in this case there is section DD, in which you do see that the floor is still at the same level, however there is a sunken floor, being created, right? So we do know that when we are doing wet areas, particularly toilets and service areas, all of these require sunken floor. Along with that, there is a filler on top of which the tiling is done. So all of these details can be clarified. How deep is the sunken pit, or how thick will be the filler which is done just below the tile, is all clarified with this kind of a section which is drawn, right? So a wall section is quite important. Moving further, right? So how do we draw a particular section, right? So here this will be the longitudinal section, and this will be the transverse section, right? So in this particular case, if we are doing AA section, then what all will we see? We will see this wall, we will see this particular door space, we will see the staircase, we will see this particular wash basin, we will see this wall, we will see this door getting cut, right? We will see this wash closet getting cut, and water closet getting cut, and we will see this window and wall getting cut, right? So along with this particular window and wall, right? So this is how the section will be cut through, right? So here is where the details are. So choosing the cut line. So often the cut lines are drawn straight, or in certain cases the cut line may also be drawn if in case you want to skip this window and maybe you have some other element which is here which you want to focus on. The same section can also be drawn, a similar kind of section can also be drawn in this particular manner as well, right. So, it is not at all a problem. The only thing is the way a section line moves should always be perpendicular to each other. So, it needs to be orthogonal all the time, right. So, it can be this way or it can be this way or whatever ways you want, but it has to be orthogonal and it needs to pass sensibly through different places, right. It should not be repeatedly cutting, neither it should be cutting or passing through the same particular room, or it should not be passing directly within the wall. So, if a section line passes through here, it does not make sense, right, because once you cut through this you will not be seeing anything, you will be just seeing the wall, right. So, it does not make sense. So, no point in passing through the wall, but you can always truncate the section something like this, right. So, this is also a acceptable way of drawing a section line, right. But this is usually done when the design becomes too complex, but in general cases you just do a straight line section, should be chosen where the maximum details can be shown, right. So, that is what is the critical way of actually putting down the section line, right. So, a section line should always pass, as we had talked earlier, you should always pass the window, doors to show the lintel and sill heights, which is quite important, right. Next, the section should also show the staircase, whether in elevation or in sectional view, right. So, in this case this will be in elevation, or if we pass a section line like this, then it will be in section as well, right. So, if we pass the section line like this, then it will be in section as well, right. So, this is how we can move the section line and get most of the details, right. Along with this, if we do a section, right, a section should also cut through the level differences of the filler slab, as we talked about earlier in this example, that the level differences in the filler slab are to be discussed. So, that is another thing which is being mentioned here, right. So, how do we start? So, we start by projecting the walls, right. So, the very first thing, the very first step that we will take, this is section AA, this particular section, this is section AA, right. So, this is how it will look. So, the first step is to project the walls and windows and all the RC elements which are there. So, here you can see the chhajja and the lintel, you see the sill, you see the plinth beam, you see another roof ceiling, the roof slab you see, the floor slab you see, the ground slab you see, right. So, all of these different RC structures are also seen, the lintels are visible here, lintel plus chhajja. So, all of these details are visible, right. So, that is to be done at first, right. All the vertical lines in the plan need to be projected, and this should include the floor slabs, wall, lintels, in beams and sunshades, right. Sunshades meaning the chhajjas which are here, right. Moving further, the doors and windows need to be shown, right, in elevation or on in section depending on the section line, right. So, in this case, if we go back, in this case the section line passes through 2 windows, right, 1 door, right. So, do we have that? Window 1, window 2 and the door. Same way on the top floor, window 1, window 2 and the door, right. So, all of these are available, and then there are 2 doors which are visible in elevation. So, for example, this door maybe on the top floor is there, but we have a direct cut door, there is no fixed pane or there is no swinging door there. So, we have a direct cutout through which we can directly see into the kitchen, right. So, the kitchen platform is visible, kitchen platform, and partly the window is also visible if you see here. So, the window is visible and the kitchen platform is visible, right, very good detail. Then we have the staircase, right. So, the staircase goes up from here. So, staircase is also visible here, right. So, very important, and then it goes up and then you have the window. So, it goes up from here and then we have the window here, right. So, all of these lines are projected and we get a first outline of how the section would look like. Moving on further, we start putting the material and the hatches within it, right? So first, so you put the earth ground hatch, then we have the plinth beam hatch, which is concrete. So all the concrete members will get, all the concrete hatches will be filled in there. Then you have the brick walls. So all the double line slant double line brick wall hatch will be filled in all the brick walls. Then you have all the interior bricks. So interior brick wall also are being hatched, right? If in required detail, in further blown up detail, the cut section of the frames of the windows are also to be hatched as wood hatch, right? So all of this will be completed, right? And if any other material is being used, as I mentioned, in case of windows, you will have wood, which is different than brick and your concrete. So in that case, you will have to hatch the brick, hatch the window area as well, right? If there are any other things, such as if there is a stone cladding, say for example, around the washroom area, if there is a stone cladding, that will also be to be hatched, right? So all of these details are to be done, right? Further, now we start adding the fixtures, the different fixtures which are there, and the furniture, right? So if we see, if we recall the first image, which is the plan, we do see what all fixtures are being cut. The table is being cut or is available in elevation. The sink will be available in elevation, probably the tap there. Then this particular wash basin and the tap, this particular wash basin and the tap, and this water closet is being cut, right? So what happens with the appliances here? Let's see, right? So we do have the wash closet or the water closet visible here. Then we have the wash closet, water closet visible here. We have the bathroom fixtures which are fit in here. The mirror as well as the wash basin is available. The wash basin as well as the mirror in the toilet area is available. Along with that, we do see the sink, we do see the sink tap, and we do see the table, right? So all the appliances are being presented and are being included in here, right? So these are to be mentioned at the correct height, the correct location where they should be, and then you start looking at the nomenclature, or you start looking at the annotation, the naming and the notes, right? So all the steps are to be numbered. So the mezzanine, or the mid landing is at 11, so it requires 11 number of steps to reach the mid landing. So that is to be mentioned. The type of window that there is in the stairwell, that is to be mentioned. This is window 3. The type of window that is visible in the elevation, which is in the kitchen, that is window type 2, that is to be mentioned. The different types of doors which are there, the door on the first floor of a particular room on top of the kitchen is door type 2. In case of this, the toilet, which is toilet number 3, which is on the first floor, the door is type 4, which will be a similar kind of door probably here as well, right, which is getting cut. So you do see the same door being getting cut in section, and you do see the same door being presented in the elevation. So with this, it becomes really easy to understand how the distribution of your doors are also being made, and whether they are looking appropriate or not, whether they are conflicting with some other material or not, that is also getting clarified, right? Moving on further. So in this case, you do see that steps in the section, a vertical horizontal dimensioning of the section is to be done, right? This is very, very important. So in this particular case, you have to do something of this order, right? So horizontal levels are to be mentioned and details are to be given. So are to be taken from the ground level and going up. So similar to the elevation that we have done earlier, you need to first identify where the existing road level is, or the existing ground level is, and then you mark the ground floor level from that. So you give the ground floor level height, elevation, and then from that point onwards you start giving the lintel levels and the upper floor levels which are there. So all the levels are to be marked, all the dimensions are to be provided on the left or the right, same as the elevations case, right? So this is all the details regarding the completion of this particular drawing. So when we put this in the sheet, this is how it will be. So this is how it needs to have the schedule of the joineries, schedule of the doors and windows, and also the drawing layout. So your template, which will be the first, so this is the preliminary section which is to be sent probably to the structural consultant and then get a feedback also from the client as well. So probably if this goes to the structural consultant, maybe the structural consultant, the first thing he will say is you are missing out on the sunk slab. So this needs to have a sunk slab. So this needs to go deeper and this needs to have a filler. Similarly here this will have a pit and this will have a filler, right? So these kinds of things are actually coming from experts. So these are like, I intentionally did this so that this becomes a clarity, this brings some clarity that what kind of mistakes we do make at architect's office. So this is where feedback will probably come from the preliminary drawing. So that's why this is not in a complete template, right? So this is the final section sheet, but this is a preliminary which is usually sent to the structural consultant, and then the structural consultant suggests amendments, right? So the amendments are suggested, probably it will come back like this, and then once the details are incorporated, that yes, this is a problem, this is how we will be fixing it, that we will be including the sunk slab in the drawing, and then it will be executed in the similar fashion on site, right? So in the same way, if you go see the apartment sections are much more detailed, and in this case you will see that all the levels are being charted out till the terrace floor plan, and this is about a 8-floor high building. So you see 8 floors there, right? So 7 floors there, and the 8th floor is the terrace. So you have a 7-floor building with stack parking, and this probably is a residential building, right? So you see all the details, you see all the toilets which are here, all the toilets have a sunken slab, all the toilets on this end also have a sunken slab, all the slabs are being shown, all the windows are being shown, doors are being shown, and details, right? Along with that, in lift and staircase, the staircase is being shown, the lift lobby is being shown, the lift pit is being shown, the machine room is being shown. So all of these are essential details which are being shown, or which are required to be shown in a actual sectional drawing for an apartment. So moving on with this, we will continue with the next module. Thank you very much.